Where can you find gourmet organic coffees, a friendly hometown atmosphere, and beautiful views of Humboldt Bay and beyond? It's Has Beans Cafe, open every day at 2nd and I Street in the heart of Old Town Eureka. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for tuning in at home and on the internet. I'm Charles Douglas with the Humboldt Sentinel here at the Access Humboldt Media Center in Eureka. This is episode 5 of Sentinel Interviews, where of course in this election season we're interviewing all of the local candidates running for public office here in Humboldt County. We've already covered the 1st Ward and 3rd Ward Eureka City Council contests, and now we're getting to the contest for mayor, where we have 3 candidates. Former Eureka Mayor Peter LaVallee, who served between 2002 and 2006. Also, 4th Ward Eureka City Council member Frank Jager is in the race, who just got elected to his seat in 2008. And of course, Marshall Spalding, who has run twice before for Eureka's mayor position in 2002 and 2006. Hear what these candidates have to say on the issues such as economic development, crime, marijuana, the balloon track, and so much more. And don't forget, you can tune in for more local news on our website, youtube.com/Humboldt Sentinel, and keep tuning in here to Channel 12. Remember, the Sentinel Interviews program premieres every Thursday at 7 p.m. on Channel 12, and also re-airs Sundays at 3:30 p.m. All right, Peter LaVallee, thanks so much for coming into Has Beans today.
Nice to be here. Been a long time.
Oh yeah. Please let the folks at home and on the internet know, why are you running one more time for Mayor of Eureka?
Well, most people do know that I served a term already. I love this town. You know, I moved here back in 1970 from Ferndale, Michigan. Lived here, had a 5-year move out to Weaverville, but this is home. I love this place. It's given me a lot, you know, in the years that I've lived here, and I want to give back to it again. You know, I enjoyed doing that the last time. I like being involved in civic affairs, so it's just, that's it, because I like it here.
And what would you say you hope to accomplish with one more 4-year term as mayor?
Well, you know, things have changed a lot since I was mayor before. We've got some, you know, real pressing issues to deal with, like a financial crisis. So that's looming, and that has to be dealt with front line. But I want to go back to what I said the last 2 times. You know, when I was mayor and when I ran for re-election, is this is such a nice place, and I think the people that live in this town I know love it, and I want to help to promote with a council a vision of where we're going to go, you know, in the next 10, 20 years. What we're going to look like, what we want it to be like, and to have that a dialogue between the council and the public. I've always felt that the best government is an inclusive government, one that lets people in the door and involves their participation in the dialogue, and I look forward to that. And I think one of the mayor's principal roles is to promote and facilitate that kind of dialogue between their government and their elected representatives.
And what would you say your method of going about really bringing about that balance in the budget and that returning health to the city finances? How would you go about that?
Well, you know, the council's started it this year in terms of looking at, you know, it goes by different names, but priority-based budgeting. You know, I think that's a good strategy, you know, and you know, it means getting our finance committee, you know, it's a very active finance committee, using them and having more dialogue with public input into that process from day one. Even when I was mayor, it frustrated me that, and those were good times, and maybe that's why it happened, but you know, the budget document's very thick, And we never really looked at it in detail, and I think that's, in these times, you have to look at the budget in detail. And not just line by line, but by area, and make some priorities. I think that just needs to occur. And it means tough decisions are going to have to be made. And of course, in politics and in life, not everybody gets what they want, so it's going to be a process of give and take. But this community needs to go through that.
And 4 years ago, you did support Measure U, which was an extension of the then utility users tax.
I did support it.
2 years later, that was changed. They repealed the utility tax and instead put in a sales tax. Now they want to raise the sales tax a whole half point, make us even with Arcata, basically.
It would.
Do you think that's the best way to go about balancing the budget, considering the impact on small business?
I don't know if it's the best way. It is a way, and I haven't really taken a position on it yet. But I do know, and I think that everyone needs to recognize this. There's two sides to the equation. You either raise your revenue or you decrease your expenditures, or you do a little bit of both, or, I mean, there's any number of combinations. What I hear around town is people complain about city government, but when they don't get what they want, then they blame the city for not getting it. And you gotta weigh those. So I'm not trying to avoid this question. I mean, the city needs more revenue, and maybe that's the way to go now. But I haven't really made a decision.
Now, of course, it does sunset after 5 years. Do you really think the city can turn the rest of its financial picture around without making more cuts to public safety in time for that funding to go away?
Well, I mean, the city has control over its expenditures. Probably more so than its revenue. I mean, Prop 13 created a real dilemma in this state. And what in my opinion, what it did is it turned every city manager into somebody that was looking for sales tax revenue through retail business. It fiscalized land use, and managers begged for those revenue dollars, to get the sales tax. Well, I don't see that changing on the horizon. The state isn't going to give us back, property tax revenue. But, I don't know that we can predict that. What's going to happen with this economy, depending on who you talk to. I believe that we go in business cycles. And, of course, we're in a low cycle now. My guess would be, just based on historical records, that we'll be out of this recession and back in a swing, in the next, 4 or 5 years. But I still don't think we should rely on sales tax revenue. My platform, and I said this before, is let's not just focus on retail. Let's focus on jobs that provide living wages. Let's look at incubating jobs and building infrastructure to get jobs in here that pay better wages than what you get in the retail world. So, it's a guessing game, but the city has to go through that exercise. That's part of what I'm talking about is vision.
Well, one of your opponents has decried what they see as the negativity because of council members disagreeing with each other. Do you think that's to blame for the number of senior city staff, from the city manager, the finance director, the city attorney, all either leaving or already having left this year?
I don't know. I'd be guessing. I haven't talked to anybody about it. I mean, there's always going to be disagreement. We all have different views, and there was disagreement when I was on the council. I mean, the council was divided. There's nothing wrong with that. I think probably it has more to do with the budget and people feeling secure. I mean, most people I know, when they talk about their workplace, you can talk about all these wonderful things in the workplace, but it boils down to a paycheck. I think that's the bottom line for almost anybody who works. I mean, we all want good work environments, but the bottom line is a paycheck. And if you're working for an organization that's got a $4.5 million deficit, what you're thinking about your own job security. So I couldn't even pretend to answer that question.
You mentioned state takeaways earlier.
Yeah.
Certainly the redevelopment agency has seen quite a massive hit this year, perhaps more to come. Do you think it's a situation where Eureka should use its redevelopment money before it loses it?
Well, I do. I've always supported the redevelopment program. I know there are people that don't. But I think it's done a lot to improve, some of the blight in this area. And, it's kind of ironic in one sense. I mean, we built a mall and then killed our downtown and then used money to redevelop our downtown. Well, that's fine. I mean, redevelopment is not a bad concept. I don't know how much money is left. I haven't sat down with the 2010 budget and gone over every line item, but I'd like to see it used, yeah.
4 years ago, you asked for a public visioning process, actually going through your whole term on the Eureka waterfront and the balloon track. Are you disappointed that Measure N has basically been put on the ballot to force through one particular plan for development, one particular zoning for the property?
Well, let me tell you where I'm at, and I'm kind of ambivalent on it, and I'll probably vote for it. Although my feeling about it is it's not really going to accomplish anything because the council's already taken action. So it's kind of a moot point. But, it's an opportunity to let the voters decide. Now, some people say, well, that's subterfuge, and maybe it is. I don't like propositions in state government because of the moneyed interest that controls them and guides them. And I think the same's true here locally. I mean, I'm glad the city isn't paying $30,000 to put that on the ballot. If it was, I'd probably outright oppose it because it's frivolous. But since somebody else is putting $30,000 up, I'm not going to fight it. It's just not worth the political fight. But it's not consistent with my vision of, access to government and one vote, one person, one vote kind of concept. That doesn't sit well with me.
As far as government reform, obviously there's a campaign finance ordinance that's been passed.
Mm-hmm.
Doesn't take effect till next year, though.
Yeah.
I believe at least one, if not both, of your opponents have said they would voluntarily follow a $500 per contribution cap on their individual donations, their campaigns. Did you support the ordinance, and is that voluntary early implementation of it something you're interested in?
I supported the ordinance. I haven't, neither of my opponents has spoken to me, so I don't know that they really feel that. They haven't contacted me. I haven't contacted them. So I don't know how to respond to that. I don't know if I will or not. I do know this, though. I've run 3 campaigns in this city. I ran for council in 2000 and I spent $7,000. I ran for mayor in 2002 and spent $40,000, and I spent $45,000 to get reelected. And it's insane to me that much money is spent for a position that's part-time and that pays $625 a month. I mean, there's something goofy about that. I had this conversation earlier today about that with somebody and go, why is that way? And I don't know if that's going to change, even with campaign finance reform, because there's so many ways around it. But I'd love to see it change. I don't know.
Obviously, the mayor is a citywide election, but those council seats, we sort of seem to have a hybrid system. I can't seem to find any other evidence in use in California where the wards are broken up for residency of each council member, but the elections are citywide. There was that true ward voting proposal. Is that something you're interested in?
I supported that true ward proposal, and it didn't get anywhere with the current council, of course. And I will still support it. It makes more sense, that that in itself, I think, would lower the cost of campaigning because, I don't have the exact numbers, but I think the last election I was in, there were about 10,000 votes cast. And if you broke that down by ward, and that it was equal-sized wards, every council member would only have to go after, 2,000 of those votes. So it could be more targeted. It just makes sense. It makes more sense financially, and it makes more sense in terms of representation. And for the people that say no, I just don't understand the argument why they would have broad. Now I see with our current system, however, with a mayor that's separate and not voted on by the council, that's a citywide.